the prompt I gave you for the single paragraph is remarkably like the prompts I suggested as term paper topics. I believe it was one of them. They are essentially the same thing, and I will be reading them the same way. So everything I say about a paragraph, you can immediately transpose to, well, when I'm writing my paper, I need to be more conscious of this. But on your end, it works the same way. You can use the same bag of tricks to get through it. And I just want to demonstrate how I would get through that particular hurdle. You know, I set a hurdle for myself and then I try and clear it. I like my odds. Taking that same essential idea and just breaking it out a little differently, I'm going to start with a very short introductory paragraph where I don't have to cite specific evidence. I do have to give an idea of what I'm going to be talking about for everything that follows. An introduction is an agenda. Everything you talk about in the introduction, you're going to develop in the final paragraphs that follow. So you keep it simple, and you don't try and go crazy. And try to keep it based on an opinion. Don't start off with facts. If you think they're facts, okay, because that's still an opinion. But don't give me a lot of throat clearing, well, the ancient era is known to extend from anywhere between 14,000 years ago to the year 0 or something like that. I don't care. Don't give me that. That's a Wikipedia article. I don't want to hear it. Social order was a priority of ancient civilizations. This seems like a fact. It is an opinion. And it is just taking, again, those key words, social order and ancient civilizations, and throwing them right back out at the reader. That's in the prompt. That's what I'm going to start out with. I'm just going to rephrase it. And then I have to find a way to tread water to give the introduction some substance. While you are writing a term paper at home, I highly encourage everyone to try writing it with an introductory paragraph of a single sentence. Keep it clean. You can always go back and fluff something up later. Keep it simple. When you are writing, I find it particularly handy to flip back up to the beginning, because when I get into the body of an essay and I'm pegging along there, and I'm thinking, oh, this and oh, that, yeah, I lose total track of what I'm writing. I have no idea after a little while. So I like to scroll back up, get to the top, and say, what was that oh, yes, that's what I'm saying. And then suddenly I go back and I read, well, everything I just wrote is actually completely off the mark of that same point, so let me just scrape that out and start fresh. It will keep you oriented. It'll keep you focused. Keep the introduction simple. In this case, I did manage to crack it out into a final version of 3 sentences. I like short introductions. If your introduction is longer than a page, it's just not going to get read. 3 sentences. Keep them tight. Social order was a priority of ancient civilizations. One of my favorite phrases, we can see this in the literature of that time. Notice, I don't mention literature until the second sentence. This is not an essay about literature. This is an essay about social order and ancient civilizations. So, I have to stay focused on that. The minute literature, the word literature, any names of authors or titles or characters or anything like that, the minute any of that starts to creep up into a first sentence of any paragraph, I know I'm off the mark. And I will make this comment repeatedly when you start sending me drafts. And I will say, try writing each body paragraph and each introductory paragraph with no names or titles. Keep the focus on the theme. These are thematic essays. I don't want essays about literature. The literature is your evidence. It's what we have to talk about as a way of discussing ancient civilization. We can see this in the literature at that time. Just a rhetorical point, prioritizing we brings your reader in on the project. A little more inclusive. And also we can see this, meaning I am going to show it to you. We are going to look into something together. It is a joint exploration. We're going to be examining evidence. Keep it simple, keep it concrete, don't fly off into the ether. We can see this in the literature of that time. These writings, now I'm getting even more specific, but still not talking about specific literature. Notably, however, writings is another way of saying literature. And you don't want to repeat the same word over and 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 over again, because that gets boring. A little variety baked into it, just on a sentence-by-sentence basis. Try not to use the same language in every sentence in a row. Alternate. Social order was a priority of ancient civilizations. We can see this in the literature of that time. These writings deliberately emphasize stability and authority. By just mentioning these two things, and especially by mentioning them as the last words before leaping into the body of the paragraph, you can bet that the rest of the essay will explicitly address stability and authority, preferably name-checking them along the way. I didn't write the full essay, but I'm just saying this is the thought process. Now that was 3 sentences that I just worked my way through in front of you. I did write them ahead of time, but it doesn't take much longer to sit there in a, let's say, timed exam environment where you're sitting there trying to write in front of you. These are the thoughts that are going through my head when I write. These are the thoughts that should probably be going through yours when you write. First body paragraph. Social order can be seen in the priority a civilization puts on people working together. That is one idea. That is one idea that is a breakout of this. I'm not just repeating the same things. I'm taking my one idea, which I put up here, and now I'm going to try and find individual elements of those. This is where doing a little outline ahead of time helps. Okay, I'm going to write an essay that says social order was a priority of ancient civilizations, period, full stop. That's my introduction. How do I break that out? I can't just write one long paragraph that just rambles. I'm going to articulate 3 specific points. So you come up with 3 specific points. You just get in there and think about it for a second. Well, okay, how do they do this? An emphasis on people working together. We can see this, notice we can see this, it's a favorite construction, in Gilgamesh. Here I will point out, which is somewhat de-emphasized since I've been underlining other stuff. It is a title. Major titles, like epic poems, plays. We're not really dealing with novels too much in this class, but certainly novels fall under this category. Major titles get italicized or underlined. It's pretty easy on most software today. With my handwriting, everything I write looks italicized, but I underlined it anyway. Do not do both when you are typing it out. One will suffice. If we were doing shorter works, like lyric poems, dozen lines or so here or there, or even an essay, that would be in quotation marks. Nothing we've done so far really falls into that category, although you can make an argument that the hymn to Aten does. Little things like that. Sinuhe, I would underline or italicize Sinuhe. I would call that a major work. We can see this in Gilgamesh at the end. And now, having cited Gilgamesh, I'm not just going to say, oh yeah, Gilgamesh, everybody knows that. We can just move on. No, I'm going to drill down and find that theme in Gilgamesh and point it out to my reader because we are in this together. At the end, when Gilgamesh speaks with Ur-Shanabi after having lost his pursuit of immortality, Gilgamesh says, first of all, not underlined because I'm talking about the character, not the title right there. Can be tricky, especially in all these works where the character's name is the title, but it's an important distinction. Notice also, I am setting up the quotation. I am providing a context for it. If a quotation just pops in, and I don't know who's saying this, and I don't know at what part of the story it's from, it's confusing. I don't know what to make of that material. I personally have read Gilgamesh several times, so I know it pretty well, but still, you throw quotes at me, I don't know. Provide a little context. You don't have to go into great detail, but just think, well, what I am using this quotation for, what information is necessary for understanding it right now? It doesn't have to retell the entire story. I do know the entire story. Please do not bore me with that. Pick out those few details that are important to understanding your point. In the end, when Gilgamesh speaks with Ur-Shanabi after having lost his pursuit of immortality, Gilgamesh says, now here we have a block quotation. Two ways of doing quotations. A block format, where if it is 3 lines or longer is the general, well, actually it's more like longer than 3 lines. That's the general rule for block formation. Then make it a block formation because it just goes on too long. Which means indented 2 tab spaces from the left and generally 1 from the right. Again, I recommend any decent software today, you can play with your margins and have all sorts of fun with that. No quotation marks necessary for a block quotation. Pace out the walls of Uruk, steady the foundation terrace, and examine the brickwork. Is not the masonry of kiln-fired brick? Follow it with a citation. Because again, I do know Gilgamesh pretty well. I have no idea often where a quotation is. And if I'm curious about it, I want to be able to go find it. So, basic MLA formatting. Immediately after the end of the quotation, in parentheses, give me the title, a comma, and the page number in our book, end parentheses, period. This all goes outside this all goes inside the sentence generally, but since this ended with a question mark, I used that. If this wasn't ending in a question, I would just have brick, and then Gilgamesh, and then the period. The citation is part of the sentence. In an embedded format, where it is, let's say, 3 lines or less, that just means it's embedded into your own sentence, which is a little bit more sophisticated. In which case you're using quotation marks. You keep the citation outside the quotation marks, but still inside the sentence. And it allows you, it's rhetorically kind of neat because it's just an extra step where you are assuming the authority of everything you're citing. Just think about this. It's like if I were standing up here and giving a lecture on the algorithms of social media. Now, I don't know anything about that, but if I had a guest speaker of Mark Zuckerberg come in and he starts to talk, I would just sit there with my arm around him and say, yeah, what he said. And that's essentially what we're doing here. We are borrowing the authority of the works that we are using. You are telling your reader, I'm smart, I read this stuff, let me tell you how to read it. That's what quoting is. And if you embed it in your own language, it just cedes less of the spotlight to your authority. It's like me sitting there and saying, well, what Mark is saying is, I don't think he would do that for me, though. I email him constantly, he won't come. This shows that. Another favorite construction. When you are going from evidence to explanation, you need to pivot. And it can be awkward because it's so much fun to type out a quotation, especially a long one, because you're just filling up all that space and you're going, you don't have to think, and you're just sort of copying, and it's great. And then suddenly, oh damn, I gotta think again. What do I write? Automatically, before you have any idea what you're about to write, just write out, this shows that. And it will springboard you into that mode, because immediately that is telling you, as much as the reader, oh, okay, we have to figure out what this proves. And this will redirect you to it and say, well, okay, I know I just wrote that, but let me go back and read it. Pace out the walls of Uruk, started the foundation, terrace, and regular masonry, kiln by brick. Okay, what does that mean? Well, this shows that Gilgamesh takes pride in his city. He is bragging at this moment. When he points out the physical characteristics of the construction, identifying the foundation and the brickwork, Gilgamesh demonstrates his pride in civil projects that will be his legacy. That's just reading the quote and explaining what the hell is going on here in your own words. It's not complicated. But look, it's a long sentence and it fills up a lot of space. It looks substantive, but all you're doing is rephrasing this. They are the effort of many workers. Notice also how I try and connect my sentences. This is another fine point. They, referring to these civil projects. So I end a sentence talking about one thing and I have to begin another one, and I try and connect it somehow. I'm always looking for that flow. Because otherwise, if I start with something else there, you're leaving your reader considering civil projects, and then if you start with a different subject in the next line, it's confusing. And every little speed bump like that is an opportunity for your reader to say, what's on TV right now? Because I'm just, this is just tiring. What you want to do is lead your reader by the nose through your argument. And the less opportunity you give them to get distracted, the fewer speed bumps and impediments you toss in their way, the better. They are the effort of many workers and will last long after Gilgamesh is gone. Notice I'm not just talking about anything, but I'm talking specifically, I'm finding my way to the theme of people working together. And will last a long time after Gilgamesh is gone, but this represents precisely the immortality he'd been seeking. Remember, we had to reference this there. I'm not just pulling that up. Oh, yeah, he was talking about immortality. That's right. I included that in my context. I included that in the setup so that the reader is primed for that. I don't want to surprise anyone. I want to tie everything together. And will last long after Gilgamesh is gone, but this represents precisely the immortality he'd been seeking. His individual goal was only achievable through collective effort. Notice also, I am trying to find different ways of saying people working together, because I know where I'm moving towards with this. This shows, again, this, pointing back to that, but this shows that. I don't mind repeating myself. I include the word conclusively here because I am making a conclusion. I am drawing the whole paragraph to a close. I'm signaling that I have made my case. Now I'm just going to remind you of it and sit down. Excuse me. This shows conclusively that this ancient civilization used its literature to prioritize the benefits of people working together, which is essential in social order. Social order is the very first phrase of this essay, of this paragraph, and it is the controlling idea of this lead-off paragraph. I'm citing these things very specifically. I am trying to give my reader a sense of confidence in this. Everything I'm writing is very deliberate. Everything I'm writing shows a sense of control. I'm not tossing in random facts. I'm not tossing in straying ideas. Every idea is linked to something else and is there for a purpose. This communicates effective thought. This is organized, this is structured, this is disciplined, and it gives my reader confidence in me. And that is where you really want to go. The details of the story, or the details of the essay rather, are almost immaterial. the confidence of you show in your handling of these details will indicate that you are somebody to be taken seriously. Now here, this is obviously applicable outside these gray dank walls. Make a clear argument, be persuasive, and show discipline in your thought, and you will go far in the professional world that generally doesn't spend a lot of time talking about Gilgamesh, or really any ancient literature. Be very surprised if any job you have really turns on that. But if you demonstrate that kind of seriousness here, and you practice that kind of focus and that ability to work within a specific medium of analysis and communication, chances are your skills will be just a little sharper when you get to your boss coming in, dumping a file on your desk and telling me, well, let me know what you think. Dive in, make some sense of it, communicate it with confidence. It's the way to the raise at the end of the year. I am not going to go crazy with, well, I'll leave this available so that you can see all of it a little more effectively. I'm not going to go crazy and write a remaining 2 body paragraphs. Off the top of my head, honestly, off the top of my head, I'm kind of dwelling on the people working together concept. And within ancient literature, I'm just thinking, oh, I don't know. I could easily make something out of when people don't work together or when people act selfishly, civilization suffers. We can see this in the Iliad when Achilles, feeling a personal affront and responding selfishly, withdraws from the fighting and disaster ensues. Many Greeks were slaughtered, perhaps needlessly, because of his selfish attitude, his refusal to fight. He, in fact, had a personal loss in that his own best friend was killed. This shows that refusing to participate is a sign of selfishness and was not accepted or was discouraged in ancient literature. Something like that. I could whip something together like that. And clearly, we can do something with the Aeneid and all of the dwelling upon duty. Aeneas is not all that excited at times about going on to found Rome, but he steps up and he does what he has to do. He fulfills his function within the society, mirroring the kind of beehive imagery that Virgil likes so much. He is, in a sense, the queen bee, commanding the workers to do what they have to do so that the hive can survive. This shows that when everybody does work together, fulfilling individual roles within a larger structure, because there I'm not just repeating the same thing about working together, we're talking about different hierarchical roles. This shows that when they do that, society flourishes, the gods approve, and ancient literature encourages this behavior. But then we're sitting there. We have laid out a not half bad first paragraph. I'm not saying this is going to win a Pulitzer or anything, but you know. I personally would probably check it out and say, all right, that's a decent paragraph. And, you know, that's the standard you're shooting for right here, I'm guessing. But then, of course, you have to get to a conclusion. Because if you just leave off with everything there, your body paragraphs, all of your evidence, body paragraphs are evidence, it's incomplete, it's unfinished. I can make what I want of all of the body paragraphs and the accumulated evidence, and I might draw a different conclusion than the one you want. You don't want that to happen. You don't know what's going on up here. I can read stuff really weird ways. You need to complete the circle. And this is when it comes in handy having a short, tight introduction. Because you can just scroll back and again, ask yourself, what the hell was I just writing? What is the point of all this? And then it's expressed in simple, clear, short sentences. Oh, that's what I'm saying. And then it's very easy to take this beginning over here and say, well, social order was a priority of ancient civilization. Conclusion. I've just laid out all my evidence. People are considering all my evidence. I want them to bridge from the evidence into the conclusion seamlessly. So I'm going to start off with all this shows that social order was a priority. See, even when I'm copying, I spell stuff wrong. Of ancient civilizations. Now, gee, that sounds familiar. I'm just so creative, endlessly creative. I am fecund with verbiage. SAT words. Social order was a priority of ancient civilizations. And here, I'm not opposed to name checking specific literature as a second step. A lot of people do that in the introduction too. I don't really mind it. Just keep it out of the first sentence. The writings of Gilgamesh. And let's just say I wrote those other things. Iliad, comma, underlining because they're titles, and Aeneid. What is going on with my voice? See, this is what happens when I don't have enough coffee in the morning. The writings of Gilgamesh and demonstrate an emphasis on the value of people working together. And again, at this point, I would probably go back and change around the stability and authority thing. But this is all handy when I'm writing it, at home on my own. People working together. And this, when people working together, this Well, let's see. Anybody who wants to come in here and look at the chapter, you're welcome to promote. And here, okay, I'll go with this. Promote the stability. I'm going to use that because you can always recycle stuff. It's your little toy box. Go back and find it. Go back and find words or phrases you like if you need. This priority of community promotes the stability that allows social order to flourish. Now here, again, I want to name check, or I want to rhyme the beginning as much as possible to give a sense of closure. This allows social order to flourish in the ancient. How do you spell ancient? There you go. In the ancient world. Or maybe I just go really explicit and say ancient civilizations. Looking sharp. Always trying to tie things together. Always trying to show unity of purpose. That kind of organization carries its own message.